So it hasn't been all that sunny for Strait Area Transit over the past couple of months, as the transit cooperative, like many services around Nova Scotia, has had to take some drastic steps over the last little while to deal with COVID-19 and the accompanying social distancing protocols. Can you give us a sense, Jim, of when you folks started to realize that some services were going to have to be shut down and what the process was there? Can you take us back in time a little bit and tell us how this all started and what you folks did as a result?
Yeah, it was a fairly, fairly abrupt halt of services. Once the announcement was made on March 13th that basically a state of emergency was being called in Nova Scotia, by that Monday, effectively services were pulled off the road. So once again, there was so many unknowns for where the virus was and how it spread, and certainly for the transit, we know that social distancing is a real issue with regards to transit, and certainly our staff not being trained or aware of what protocols might be in place. So that was the moment that we really had to suspend services, and it was when most, March break was on at school, so there was really, it was a full stop for most of our institutions that we were serving, except for the hospitals, of course, but even they went into a different mode during that time.
Well, that's just it. I mean, obviously, community college, Nova Scotia Community College shutting down, most of the universities as well, shifting very quickly to online learning, just as the public school system. And like you say, medical appointments, especially those that were not deemed immediate and urgent, were all automatically shut down. So that takes a lot of your clientele off the road as well, too. So you folks have been off the highways for 2.5 months now. Can you give me a sense on what it would take to be able to get any vehicles back on the road?
Well, we have kept a skeleton crew going, so that we've had a couple of drivers and 3 buses available for any emergency medical. So doctor ordered medical visits that we still are open to that. And then we've done some work with the food hampers that were donated by Seaside Communication. And we've been delivering those up the Inverness coast. We've done that 3 times, I believe. So we've maintained a fleet of a few vehicles and a couple of drivers on standby. But to really ramp up services again, what occurred during that period between when the state of emergency was called and the end of March, our manager at the time, Jessie McDonald, had applied for another job, and she'd put in a number of years being successful in what she did, managing a fairly growing and robust business cooperative for the people. Had obviously gained some skills, and so she got a job with the health authority, which is wonderful for her. But it also left us without a manager. So effectively, a board has stepped in to pick up, what's outstanding in terms of invoices and making sure everything's cleared up there. And one of the board members is on the front line, just answering the phones and making sure that's done. So we've stepped in as a board just to maintain the work that needs to be done, while we've also done some evaluation, I think, of the key positions as we move forward. So we've reposted for a manager position. Closed on Friday on the 25th of May, and we'll just be shortlisting and doing some interviews for that. So really that puts us in a position to really kind of ease a new manager in with regards to the complexity, what it is to run a transit that has as many moving parts as we have between Victoria County Transit and Strait Area Transit. It's a relatively huge operation, really, when you think of it, to just jump in and do that. So as we say, when will we get started again? When will we be ready to ramp up? I know that the Rural Transit Association is working on some protocols. I think by mid to end of June they're going to be releasing those and to all the rest of the transit so that we can work through them. They're just drafts at this time, so that we'll have some sense of how we're going to move forward with our drivers, our equipment, how we're going to maintain social distancing, within the transit. So that's a work in progress. Looking like more the end of June would be the first opportunity to even discuss it, how we'd start up again. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so we're looking at certainly a few weeks down the road. Have you folks, you mentioned Victoria County's transit service, have you folks been in good communication with the other transit services being offered around the area? Of course, there's Antigonish Community Transit as well, too. Some of them not too far down the road from what Strait Area Transit does. Has there been good communication with all of the local networks in terms of being able to, as you mentioned, get a coordinated strategy, but also to give some moral support to each other during this difficult time?
No, absolutely. There's been a good, consistent communication from the leadership at the RTA, and so connecting all the rural transits, and they've been once again trying to update everyone as to what's happening. The province has really stepped up with some of their support too, in terms of just the fiscal side of it, because while transit's not going, there's still overhead costs, right? You're still paying insurance, you're still covering costs. It's not like going right to zero that you're being able to maintain everything. So we've been, I think, well supported by both the province and both the RTA to just be in communication that we're all in this together. We're all going to try and sort out how is the best way to kind of reemerge from this to offer a transit that's going to be effective for the clients and safe for the staff.
Now, obviously, you and I have had this discussion before that running a rural transit system is difficult at the best of times, especially in terms of being able to keep it financially sustainable. Has it been a sort of situation for you folks where it's evened out, that you're saving some money because the vehicles aren't on the road and the drivers aren't out in full force? Or is it even more difficult now because the revenue side of things has taken a plunge over the last couple of months? I mean, financially, how is Strait Area Transit doing at this point, and how will it be doing over the summer?
Well, I think, that's, we're right now working to do the year end. March 31st is our year end. It aligns with municipal budgets and provincial budgets. So ordinarily, municipal budgets would be set based on what our year end looks like in our projections. So we're really kind of still working through that. And I know municipalities, I know at our municipality, it's a harder budget process when you're not in the same room all the time and you're trying to work through that. So there's some challenges for all of us right now. But what the province has done is it's forwarded the first 2 quarters of the CTAP payment, which is a payment for the dial-a-ride, which supports operations. So for Strait Area Transit, that represents about $45,000, and Victoria County Transit, a portion of that would be quite a bit less. But anyways, that gives us some maintenance and able to kind of cover our costs, because yes, a third of our budget comes from the in revenues in terms of fares. A third of our budget approximately comes from municipalities, and a third of our budget has grown on the provincial side as they see the importance of this. But what we're really going to have to do, Adam, as I say, once we get through what is the new protocol, how many people can you put on a bus, that's going to change a lot of the dynamics, probably of rural transit, in allowing us to be fair to the user and our public, and being able to still be affordable, plus for us to run a service that can be operationalized with the budgets that we previously had. So there's some work to be done. As I say, fortunately, we've got a good track record that we can use to kind of formulate, I think, some ways forward that will support the budgetary needs of the municipalities, to know that, and then our users to be able to not see an increase in that fare. That's something we really care about. The province has to be a bit greater of a role to ensure that we can keep transit going.
Let me pick up on the municipal angle just for a second, Jim, if I could, because obviously you folks depend on funding from the municipal governments. Both the town of Port Hawkesbury and the county of Richmond have suggested that they're going to be going through a very difficult budget process in terms of just trying to stem the tide of red ink. I imagine that's very much the same in Inverness County as well too. What's your sense in terms of Port Hawkesbury and Richmond as to whether they feel that they can continue to contribute to Strait Area Transit as we go forward here?
Well, as rural transit, we started in 2007 with Strait Area Transit at a very early stage to just see what was the uptake. And really, when I came on as board chair in 2012 or 13, we were almost at the end of it in terms of being able to maintain and try and do this, because there wasn't really enough support from the municipalities or the province at that time. Once we took off on that two-year pilot where the municipality of Inverness put in $140,000 for 2 years, allowed us that substantial investment to provide evidence that if you ran a consistent service, it was needed and used. So for us to evaluate how important this is it a basic service? It almost is a basic service. Coming out of the pandemic, you don't know what's going to be the pressures on individuals and families to be able to get to appointments, to be able to get to school, be able to get to jobs. It's not a given that everyone comes out of this in the same place they were when they went in. So I think for a municipality like us that's run a very effective service that, as you know, I think last year over 20-something thousand people using it, that you got to look at it as that it is that basic service that we've been able to adapt, shape, and make relevant to all our communities. So that as we go through our budgeting, I can see there's a lot of hard decisions that are going to be made. I would hope that the partnership between the provinces and the municipality will be stronger. And if there is some, budgeting stresses on the municipality, that conversation with the province can be, I think, a more productive one based on this sort of work that's been done to this point to substantiate rural transit as an integral piece of how rural communities are going to be able to maintain and strengthen their economies and their health of their communities.
Last question to you, Jim. This is about the experience that you've had and that the people that you've worked with have, the individual drivers and such. We know that this is not the first challenge that Strait Area Transit has faced. There was a point just a few years ago where the service was pulled off the road due to financial difficulties. But as you said earlier, nobody really expects the width and breadth of a pandemic, and few people really plan for the width and breadth of a pandemic in terms of a service like a transit service that serves rural communities. What do you and your colleagues and the drivers and the employees think you'll take away from all of this as you go into the future, once this all settles down? Are there positive lessons having been learned from all this that you feel will help Strait Area Transit as it heads into the 2020s in earnest?
Well, I mean, that's the loaded question here. What are the lessons learned? I think for me, the Atlantic Canadian experience with COVID has 19 has proven out that we're really good at what we need to do to stay safe. What I think we will learn going forward is that transit is an essential service, and it's been expanded across the whole region of Nova Scotia, and we will continue to be able to offer this service, and I think adopting whatever the best protocols and practices that come through. So I think we've learned a lot. Once again, I think Strait Area Transit was a pioneer, taking in such a spread out rural area and being, like you say, there was times where it was against the wall, but we never gave up and sometimes had to regroup. That I think regrouping from this, I think our board is strong. I think our management drivers are dedicated and professional, and we'll be able to work with them to help support their needs in terms of what they need to go forward, feeling safe in their and professional in their roles. And then I think we can certainly, in working with our funders, provide them with the confidence that this transit will move forward to continue to build on the success that we've had in the last few years, to really show that we can be something that's really supportive of the whole community in the way that we've been able to provide charters, regular services, dial-a-ride, medical appointments. These are things that are essential for our community the more that we got into it, and having that there when we come out of the pandemic in whatever way that is will be something I think that Strait Area Transit is going to be well prepared for.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that new era when it comes. And we've covered a lot of ground in just a short time. Jim, I appreciate you giving us some time here today. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up here?
I think we've all been shaken by what's happened right now. And I think just having that in context, if everyone can be patient in terms of what it's going to take to get going again, that will be helpful to all of us. That we'll all learn how to move forward with this in so many ways that we're already doing. But so just asking for people's patience. We know that there's going to be probably some demands coming down that people are going to expect maybe transit can get going. So just bear with us. That's what I'll say. So,
all right. Well, we'll bear with you, and thank you for bearing with us as we carry the interview out. Jim Mustard, thanks so much for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for your time today.
No
All
trouble
the best.
at all. Jim Mustard is the Municipal Councillor for District 3 of Inverness County, and we are speaking to him today via Skype in his capacity as the Chair of the Board for Strait Area Transit.